Bill of Rights. The Fourth Amendment says that everyone has a right to feel safe in their body, that unwarranted search and seizure is against the law. I'm aware it's meant to protect citizens from the government taking these actions, but there are similar laws, citizen to citizen, that feels right because who should be exempt from things like this? I find the Fourth Amendment an interesting statement from the same government, well, the government that governs the government, that dismissed my rape case, the case for the rape that causes my seizures, psychogenic, non-epileptic seizures I did not order, but received, are served still bloody from the womb of the unnecessary. Conversion disorder in my case is PTSD-based, and I think we can agree that the rapist's search of my innards with his 2 dirty fingers in my vagina lacking anything like my consent was unwarranted. So it seems to follow that the warping of my psyche that came as a result of his attack of my being was unwarranted. You'll remember that part of this tampering led to seizures which are, if you follow, unwarranted. And I don't think I need to say that I didn't feel very safe in my person when he shoved my head down as I struggled. So American justice, I think you were supposed to protect me, but I guess that's optional when the perpetrator of unwarranted search and seizure has a rich-ass daddy.
I'm Noelle. And I'm Zoe, and for our PSU Stats 244 project, we wanted to choose a topic that was relevant to current society and the Grant community. Therefore, we researched sexual assault in Wilson and Grant high schools. The questions that we chose to research are, does Grant and Wilson seniors' opinions on sexual assault being a relevant issue in schools differ based on gender? And does high school students' opinions on sexual assault being a relevant issue in schools differ based on school location? To collect our data, we made a Google form survey and had 6 different high school students post the survey link on their social media. We received 192 responses from various schools all over the state. We got the greatest number of responses from Wilson and Grant High School and felt it would be interesting to specifically focus on these schools because they are located on opposite sides of the city. The first test we conducted was a chi-squared test for independence between opinion on sexual assault being relevant in schools and gender at an alpha value of 0.05. We calculated the test statistic and the p-value using the matrix A calculator function, as well as the chi-squared statistics test calculator shortcut.
A guy in my class threatened to rape me multiple times because I didn't agree to go out with his friend. He said it was a joke, but I didn't view it as one and was afraid to go to school. I was also raped in the 6th grade by a senior. This led me to change schools because no one believed me. I was harassed and called names. Then in 8th grade, a classmate threatened me so I would send photos to them. Sophomore year of high school, I was sexually assaulted by a guy who has done things to other girls. When I came forward to administration, they told me I shouldn't come forward and that I should leave it alone.
The test results concluded that opinion on sexual assault being relevant in schools is dependent of gender and that the 2 variables are associated. Therefore, we reject the null hypothesis. This is because the p-value is less than the alpha value and the test statistic is inside the critical value range. The second test we conducted was also a chi-squared test for independence between opinion on sexual assault being relevant in schools and school location at an alpha value of 0.05. We used the same calculator functions and shortcuts as the first test.
I was forced to stay in a locked classroom by another student while he repeatedly groped me and told me he wanted to do things to me. I went to the school and they told me it was because I should have worn something else. When I had just broken up with an ex of mine, one of their friends slapped me on the ass and told me that my ex wasn't going to protect me anymore. Right outside the school.
Similar to the first test, the results also concluded that opinion on sexual assault being relevant in schools is dependent on school location and that the 2 variables are associated. Therefore, we reject the null hypothesis. This is also because the p-value is less than the alpha value and the test statistic is inside the critical value range. In the end, we discovered that opinions on sexual assault in school are dependent on school location and gender, and that 93% of female-identifying students felt that sexual assault was a more prominent issue in schools compared to 58% of their male-identifying peers. Because 80% of sexual assault victims are female, this topic is possibly viewed as more relevant by female students. We also learned that 94% of Grant students find sexual assault to be relevant in schools compared to 64% of Wilson students. This may be in part to the fact that more female students from Grant took the survey compared to male students. Another factor of this result may be due to the relevance of the topic in the Grant community. In comparison, a Wilson teacher said that it is rare for Wilson students to have open communication on rape culture or consent.
We also faced some biases when collecting our data. Because students had to choose to take the survey, this led to a possible voluntary bias. We also had 68.2% of our responses come from females compared to only 27.1% from males, and the remaining data being non-binary students. For the sake of the test, we could only use data from males and females because there wasn't a large enough number of non-binary students surveyed. Our test statistics were also very similar in each test. This is possibly because, based upon the way we grouped our data, we could have had similar opinions. For example, more females from Grant and more males from Wilson. If we had more time to conduct our research, we ideally would have had a more equal sampling. Other limitations include there not being as large of a sample size as we would have preferred, and there only being 2 members in our group.
A 2011 study by the Department of Education titled Crossing the Line examines the prevalence and effect of rape culture and assault in schools. They discovered that girls were more likely than boys to not only experience harassment or assault, but also the effects of such experiences. This includes not wanting to go to school, changing the way they go home from school, and trouble sleeping. The study also examined why the prevalence of sexual assault in grades 7 to 12 comes as a surprise to many. This is because only 9% of unwanted sexual advances are reported to an adult at school.
They tell a disturbing story.
Shocking allegations of rape.
Been arrested and charged of raping.